All right. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to try to add my collaborator here. Nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. All right. Let me add in my friend Jen. Did this work? I think it's worked. Yes.
It's always scary the first time, right?
It's so scary, Jen. I feel like you're a pro at these things, but I am like, how does this work? Please
Uh,
explain this newfangled technology to me.
I,
Nothing makes me feel older than having to do any social media, anything.
I'm
E-
embarrassed to admit how many times they have to explain it to me over and over and over again. So
But I don't even have like a generational excuse, not to say that you do, but I
I,
just
I,
feel
I
like people
do. It's
expect,
okay.
as a millennial, people expect more of me, and I also feel that pressure.
I I admit to being the feral generation, so like that's fine. That just means I like stumble through everything until I darn well like make it work how I want it to work.
All
So
right.
yay, we're here. Do we
We
want
are
to
here.
introduce ourselves? I don't know what we're supposed
I
to
think
do.
introduce ourselves, what we're doing here, the fact that
Okay,
this is not a one-time only affair.
correct.
And then we can jump into all the juicy stuff.
Perfect. You want to go
Um, uh,
first?
sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Jarret Zafran. I'm the founder and executive director of Brownstone Surrogacy. I also have two daughters born through egg donation and surrogacy. So I'm a parent through third-party reproduction, and in a prior life, I was an attorney before I found the good sense to quit my law firm and do this much happier work. And we had two babies born yesterday, and so like my texts have just been like baby pictures today, and
I,
it's nothing is better than that, honestly.
November is a really good month for babies,
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Scorpio season. All right, Jen, who are
okay.
you?
I am Jennifer White, or more commonly Jen. I own Bright Futures Families Surrogacy. I've owned surrogacy program for 10 years. And before that, I did actually work on a law firm that does assisted reproductive technology law. So also have done this for a little bit of time and escaped from that side of things, which was really lovely. I have one kiddo. I went through infertility myself, but my kiddo is almost 20. So as we were dating me earlier, really, really dating myself
Wait, how
because
can you have a child at 9, Jen?
I know, right? I was so young and I had to go through all those years of infertility on top of that. How did that happen? Yeah. So, no, so I have a almost 20-year-old. It's amazing. And we also, I know you said you have two. I'm not trying to like big ourselves up, but November has been insane for us. We had two babies on Friday. We had two babies yesterday, and we have one that we weren't expecting for another week on the way today. So
Babies
it is
make
a
their arrivals
I
when
just
they
want to
make
say
their arrivals.
November, we knew like going, we knew 9 months ago that November was going to be crazy. And
That's
it
for
is.
for us, it's Valentine's Day. I don't know what it is, but like every almost every one of our surrogates that's pregnant right now is due in the middle of February. Like half of them have a due date of Valentine's Day, which feels
It's
very
crazy, right?
appropriate.
It goes
Yeah,
in waves. So we're just in our wave right now. So we're not one upping. It's just that some months we also have none. So
that's exactly right, and that's okay.
exactly, exactly.
All right, so this, I don't want to claim mutual admiration. You can speak for yourself. I'm a big admirer of Jen and her program, and she's been an incredible resource to me and to Yesenia, my co-director. And we just like collaborating with professionals that we see eye to eye on. And so we're gonna do this roughly every 2 weeks or so, for however long we decide to do this for. And that
Until we
depends.
don't.
Yeah, exactly. Until we don't. But that also, to those that have joined us, please tell us what you would potentially want us to discuss, ask questions right
Yeah.
now during this one,
It should
whatever.
be a dialogue, not just between us, like
Yeah.
also between other people. Oh, they want to know about your cuterus in the back of the
Okay,
neck.
yes. So I tufted this rug, which I'm very proud of
Seriously?
myself.
That's
It
awesome.
was a team building exercise, and everybody made very impressive things. And I thought maybe I'm being an idiot by choosing something with all sorts of like rounded angles and whatever, but it
It's
came out pretty good.
amazing. I
Yeah,
love it. I
look
had
at
no
that.
idea, but see, I learn new things about you all the time. Look at you and your crafting. That's
Uh,
amazing.
Truly, like, not an artistic bone in my body, but I made it work somehow.
I mean, I will admit I'm actually at my parents' house right now visiting them, so nothing you see is attributable to me, so it's fine. Okay.
All right. Our topic for this one is surrogacy an ethical form of family building? There's just not just the like specific ethics of how you go about it, but writ large, is surrogacy itself ethical? And I know you were just at the Seeds conference. You've been debating with people about this for years. I don't know where we begin, but I guess maybe there's something from the Seeds conference where you can explain to people what Seeds is, and then sort of what types of discussions were had recently.
Yeah, I mean, so SEEDS, for lack of, people who don't understand what that is, it's the Society for Ethics in Egg Donation and Surrogacy. It is an organization that obviously tries to establish ethics and boundaries and guidelines for all of us who are in this area. Um, Obviously, always a growing organization. Is getting better every year, and I'm going to say amazing positive things about it because I'm on the officer team as of this year. So, like really, we're hoping to do some amazing things on top of all of the amazing things that have been done up until now. And I think the reason part of this topic is really top of mind for a lot of us, and it did get brought up quite a bit, is there are bad things out there, right? Which make
Yeah.
it so that people are concerned about the ethics. The big two that to me come to mind is the Mark's surrogacy case,
Hmm.
which there's a lot to unpack with that. And then the other, and I spoke on a panel about gatekeeping, and I brought up and talked about the case that was in the New York Times about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, about the family. The woman had 14 children already. Was it 14 children? 13 children already?
13
13
already, and then
already.
twins
And
through
then she had
surrogacy.
twins via surrogacy with donated embryos, allegedly without her husband's knowledge as well.
Yeah.
So like that also adds another layer to unpack on that one. So then
Yeah.
she
And
had
in their mid
children, and
60s.
they were in their mid 60s also.
Yeah.
So on top of the not having consent from her spouse, they were in their mid 60s as well.
Yep.
And they had children who were fully grown and were having their own families at the same time.
Hmm.
And I mean, and so that's where I think people get very hung on the
Yeah.
ethics of this, right? Is that how many children is too many? At what age are you too old to grow your family further? And it can be really tricky to parse through that, right?
Hmm.
And again, some of these have other levels that make you go, "Oof, well, without consent, that's no matter what you feel about anything else, you got a bright line
Yeah.
without consent, right?" And even in the Mark Surrogacy case, if you want to argue that they did want to have those children all for themselves, like let's give the kindest reading there, right? None of those surrogates knew about each other
Yeah.
either. And so they also didn't have consent, which goes back to the ethics and things like that. So I'd love to hear your thought. I mean, we obviously can talk about other things behind
Yeah.
those, beyond those two, but like those are really easy ones to pick on as the bad ethics and why we can obviously go to good ethics.
Sure. And I mean, then if you are considering becoming a surrogate, how do you feel like, oh, well, I will know
How do you
everything there
guarantee
is.
any of these things? Yeah.
Yeah. I will know that the intended parents are um, actually who they say they are, that they have been vetted, that there
Yep.
aren't 15 other surrogates caring for them simultaneously, that both of them are genuinely invested in this in like a true way,
Yeah.
that I won't sort of be left holding the bag. There's so many different fears that,
Right.
based on true events, people are. It is rational to have those fears going in, and yet you and I know that 99% of the time this is beautiful and life changing and affirming and empowering.
Right.
And so, that's just the nature of media, and I'm not going to blame the New
Okay.
York Times or Wall Street Journal
They
or
love to tell
Wired or
big fun stories, right? They're way more
right.
fun than yay,
Ex-
we had two babies, right? Like that's just not fun publication.
exactly. And we've tried to like place the good stories like in local news outlets, and we've been on like Chicago
They
local
don't get
news,
the
and
traction
yeah,
though.
yeah. But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and also for intended parents, like going into this, given the escrow scandals and other things that have been going on, how do you know that you are protected as well? So there's so much vulnerability on both sides, and a real leap of faith, but it shouldn't require faith.
It shouldn't. And I will say the panel I spoke on at the conference a couple of weeks ago was about gatekeeping. And
Mhm.
the reason I was very passionate about it and what I talked about is because yes, everybody goes, well, the agency, what is the agency involved? Well, obviously in Mark's, they were the
Right.
agency, right? And even with the other in the New York Times, like there were two agencies. It was like they passed off one to the other because of
Yep.
licensing in New York, because one was licensed in New York, and they're like, hey,
Sure.
let's pick up because you have
Because
the
the first
license.
one didn't have this flimsy little certificate.
Correct, correct, but it makes a big difference. But
Yeah.
the thing is that it there isn't just one and done as to whose responsibility it was in any of these cases, right? So why was the in the Mark surrogacy case, why was the clinic not asking, hey, you know what? I just transferred to surrogate number whatever
Hmm.
18. It was the same clinic. Their attorney, why isn't the attorney not asking these same questions? They probably didn't have escrow in this case, but in other cases, escrow is also a place that has the
Yeah.
ability to have gatekeeping. Mental health providers, were mental health checks even being done? And if so, were they using the same ones? Were they? And I understand there's a lot of confidentiality and things like that, but that's where all these things like checking, are these real people on the other side? Like,
Hmm.
I've definitely noticed a trend towards attorneys asking me for copies of IDs, for copies of background checks
Yeah.
on intended parents, which they did not used to ask for. And I even actually this week had a request for the mental health evaluations or consultation report for intended parents as well. So
Yeah.
that's good, right? We're starting to see a much bigger drumbeat towards taking care of each other so that we are making surrogacy more ethical and safer all the way around for everybody.
Yeah, I always, whenever I send a case off to attorneys to get them started with drafting, I always had a line basically be like, if there's anything else you want from us, like if you want to see a copy of the psych evaluation, if you want to see the background checks, by all means. And most attorneys didn't take me up on that, and that's okay because I think by proactively offering, they knew I had done them
Right.
and and done them appropriately and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, there are so many gatekeepers, and for agencies, we can decide which clients to take and which clients not to take, and which
Right.
surrogates to approve and match, and which ones to turn away. And I've had surrogates that don't pass the psychological evaluation, and I am always thankful to those mental health professionals for
Correct.
being upfront and saving me potentially a headache, and the intended parents a headache. And it's rare, but I'm fine with a surrogate being denied, and I will continue to refer business to that
And
psychologist. And
we are apparently, as that was again, we had an attorney, a mental health professional, and a medical professional, and I think we are among the few that have that viewpoint because that's the drumbeat is that they're afraid to deny because they're afraid to stop getting business from
right,
the surrogacy programs. And it's like the more ethical we can be about saying, no, please, I want to have a collaborative conversation with you. I don't want you to deny her. I want you to be honest with me if there is a flag about that that we need to be looking at so that hey, maybe this isn't the right thing because every person who steps forward to be a surrogate already is an amazing human being, right? Like that's just it. Like they have this
hmm,
giant heart that is, like to give. I mean, because it really is the ultimate act of giving. And sometimes you're just not qualified. I mean, and sometimes mental health things, and it doesn't mean you're mentally ill, it doesn't mean any of those things, right?
You
Can
know,
be just as important as, hey, I had gestational diabetes, right, in my history or things like that. Like all of these things come together because ultimately, to be ethical surrogacy, right, we want to have happy, healthy surrogate going home afterwards. We want
mhm.
happy, healthy parents going home afterwards. And we especially want best interest of that child who's being born.
That's right. This is not, I maybe the cynic in me as a New Yorker, I'm always thinking about like incentives, and you have a case here where everybody's incentives are aligned to push this forward, right? Fertility clinics want to accept a surrogate, want to transfer, want to accept the patients. Agencies want to be able to approve a surrogate and match them and move forward. Like everybody wants it to work because they're all incentivized for to say yes at every
Yep.
time, and yet it's our obligations to say no when it's appropriate, and it's obligation of attorneys and psychologists and fertility clinics to say no where it's appropriate to do so. But I guess speaking more broadly about like there's critics of surrogacy that didn't even need these headlines as fodder for their critique of, the commodification of women's bodies, of the idea that when somebody is compensated for that selfless act, that it is now
All
um,
right.
a
All
form
right.
of
But
coercion.
okay, I'm gonna throw this back at you though. Do you get, and I'm sorry to ask a really crass question, and I'll answer the exact same question.
Please.
Do you get paid for what you do?
I sure do.
I do too,
Yeah.
right? And it's labor, what I do. You know,
Yep.
I do my job. And surrogates, while it's not employment, it is a job, and it is actually a very dangerous job. And they deserve to be compensated. I was at the International Surrogacy Conference in South Africa in the spring, and Sarah Jeffords, who is an amazing athlete from
Australian lawyer.
Australia,
Mhm.
um, stood up and she just told this absolutely rousing story about minors, and that minors deserve hazard, that they get hazard pay, right? Because they're going down in
Mhm.
their mines, and there was, I can't remember how many minors it was, they got trapped and they were in there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And she was like, they deserve hazard pay too. These surrogates, they are absolutely like, it is a hazard, right? You are putting your life at
Yeah.
risk every time. Like, yes, are generally they're good outcomes, hooray, right? But also, we live in the United States where we have
Yeah.
one of the higher maternal, like poorer maternal fetal outcomes, right? And out there, it is a risk, and so ethically, we should be compensating somebody for a risk that they are undertaking. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah. I am in agreement 100% to nobody's surprise.
I know. We're
But
like, we're saying the same thing. We're like, we'll just keep
I
yelling
love
to
pre
with each other. I know.
I love when I get to preach to a choir and vice versa and live in my echo chamber. No, but I think it then becomes everybody's responsibility, thinking of
Yeah.
gatekeepers, to make sure that somebody is truly consenting and fully informed.
Yes.
And so I would love to hear sort of how you go about doing that. I will say that for us, in addition to any sort of documents and the ability to ask questions and be responsive, about halfway through a surrogate screening process with us, my co-director and I, Yesenia, and she's been a surrogate a few times, and I obviously come at it from this end. We meet with every surrogate and their spouse or partner for a full hour, and more than half of that is asking them, telling them about how hypertensive disorders are more common in surrogacy pregnancies or IVF pregnancies, that there is a risk of a hysterectomy, and to make sure that they're comfortable with the idea that they may not be able to carry more children of their own. But we also ask, what if you're placed on bed rest? What if you are out of town? Who's watching your kids? Is work flexible? Or are they going to fire you because you're going to too many morning appointments? Just like the whole, I want to make sure that somebody goes in with this with eyes completely wide open. And even if a surrogate is coming to us and has already done this before, I still want to have that
Same
conversation because I
conversation.
don't know if somebody else has ever had that conversation with them and made the spouse or partner sit there and listen to the risks, not
Yep.
just their obligations to the process, but make sure they're genuinely on board despite what could happen to their spouse or partner. And so, you know, we sort of begin the conversation like we're going to kind of try to talk you out of this, but hopefully we fail. But like, I just
Sure.
want to put everything on the table.
And that's
So,
exactly right. If you're not talking about the bad stuff up front, then you're not telling the truth, right? Is what it really comes down to. And I will say we do have a conversation like all very similarly, right? That we talk through with the surrogate. Obviously, that's also part of the match meeting too, because we want to talk through with
mhm,
everybody all together. We also, I believe really strongly in giving people information in multiple formats, right? So, like, yes, we can have a conversation with you, but what if you're the kind of person that, like, after 5 minutes, you're just like, that is Charlie Brown's voice, right?
yeah,
Like, and
blah,
you
blah,
would
blah.
prefer to
Yeah,
listen to, like, you'd like to read things or those kind of things. So,
yeah,
we also try to make sure that we have everything in print as well so that
great.
people can absorb it in different ways. I also make sure, especially on the medical front, every gestational carrier, once her medical records have been received by us, we send her and her records to an MFM. No
Hmm.
excuses. Everybody sees an MFM, and she has to go to that appointment because that means that she has the ability to have informed consent, have that conversation, have every one of those questions answered by a medical professional. Because
Right.
while we've seen it all, right? We tend to see it. That's the way it is. It's just that they're an actual doctor. Like they know those true risks. And I will say somebody. I'm sorry, I can't read the whole comment in there. Is it that it, I think generally it's exactly what it is. People can't. What the person is saying is that people can't always understand truly the entirety of the risk. And
Hmm.
I will say most people want to put their head in the sand, right? It won't happen
Yeah.
to me. And is that generally true? It won't happen to you? Sure. Generally, it won't because, these complications are pretty rare, but it's like conversations about termination. It's about
Hmm.
any of those other conversations. I don't want you to be the one in a million time because if you are that one in a million time it's happening to you, it is not one in a million. It is one in 100. It is 100 out of 100 for you, right? That is
Yeah.
it. Like it is the only thing that's happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's kind of depressing because we have to dwell on the worst case scenarios and talk
Mhm.
about them in day in and day out. But
That's why you came to this as a
that's
lawyer because that's all lawyers do is think about
right.
worst case scenarios.
Exactly, exactly. All right. Well, we are about 20 minutes into this, and I just want to invite if anybody has questions for us on the topic of whether surrogacy is an ethical form of family building, to ask them or
I
drop
said, we didn't
below.
even talk about international. Like, God,
Oh my
like
God.
we
Yeah, I don't. I just generally don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but
I I will say there was no valid reason for me to need to go to the International Surrogacy Forum, just except that I really wanted to go and I learned so much. It was so amazing because a lot of things that I mean, as Americans, we have a culture. We don't necessarily think of ourselves as having a unified culture. I mean, but we do
yeah.
compared to other places. And there was one country where surrogacy was legal, and but in order to utilize a surrogate, the surrogate had to be related to you. So, okay, so you think about, well, what if you don't have a sister, right?
Hmm.
Okay, but okay, so how they got around that, and this is bizarre, was that you could have plural marriages. And so if you needed a surrogate, you would marry the surrogate. So then he would have multiple wives and have to marry. So, like, culturally, it was like to me I'm like, whoa, that is mind blowing, but they were like, yeah, this is how we do it. And that's why they don't see what we do from other countries the same way, right? Because they have a different cultural understanding.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you
oh, I like your
suggested?
question.
Yeah, I
Oh, go
like it
ahead.
too. We should
And
ask.
it
We should
actually
answer
something
it in
that
a
was
second.
while you were
I'm
talking,
cur-
something that was, oh, sorry, go first.
I'm just curious if you've told intended parents in consultations, like, have you considered marrying your surrogate? Just like, just throwing that out there. No, this is a great question. The question is, how can surrogates and intended parents make sure that they're finding a truly ethical agency so that the process then does end up creating an outcome that you can trust that is ethical? Like, how does somebody go about researching this and just sorting through. I mean, there's hundreds of surrogacy
There
agencies. It's
are, and that
shocking,
was
but
actually what my first thing, as we were talking, you were talking at one point, and I was like, in my head, I'm shouting, I'm like, well, of course we're like, yeah, that's what you do. It's because we are, I mean, we consider ourselves an ethical agency, right? And
yeah,
so that's what, like, we're in our own sound chamber, but the problem is there are so many that are not ethical out there. So this question falls exactly to what I had been thinking of earlier. And I mean, I don't, the problem is it's really hard to know the answer, like how to do that. I mean, do I think that things like seeds membership, I think that's important? Yes. Do I
hmm,
think it's the end all be all? No, I don't.
yep,
Right? Like that's the thing, is that it is one more barometer about somebody taking another step. Same thing with New York licensure, right? Is it important? We're both licensed in New York. Yay, right? Like, is it the end all be all? No, it's not.
right.
It's the like, and I one of my barometers and feelings is how an agency leads its presentation. And this is my personal beliefs. You don't have to, agree with me on this one at all, but like a lot of these programs out there that are advertising, make up to $100,000,
Hmm.
and they're leading with the insane money and the up to. They're not giving you an accurate, like, I don't
Yeah.
think there's a problem at putting compensation amounts in advertising. If you say, hey, our surrogate compensation starts at $50,000, right? That's very different than up to $100,000,
Hmm.
where you're saying, hey, we've got, like, if you end up on hospital bed rest for, 12 weeks and you have a high wage earner, and, adding every single thing together, like that, it's a it becomes a bait and switch.
It's
And if somebody's willing to do that, that's a bad sign.
Yeah, I think it's transparency across the board. Will I get to choose my own lawyer? Who is holding the money? What does the compensation and benefits package look like? Will life insurance be placed for me? How many intended parents are waiting? Who is your clientele base typically? How long is screening and matching going to take? Like, I'm just rattling questions off the top of my head. Like, what makes you
And
different from other agencies? Like, you should just ask all of the questions, and
and
if you
any
get
good
any
program, yeah,
hesitation,
yeah, and any good
pro-
program should be able to tell you those, willing to tell you those things
yes,
without any kind of push towards, like, well, then join us and then we'll tell you. No,
right.
we'll be transparent, tell you. I think transparency is actually one of the
I
perfect
mean,
things to say.
both of our websites have like
Everything.
almost all of the information
Right.
that you could possibly want about us, just like right front and center.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like another tell is the website essentially just a landing page, and you need to contact them for any information, or is this right here? You know what their process is, you know what the screening entails.
I
You
also
know,
say, like,
yeah,
is their staff listed on their website?
right.
Like, especially their owners listed? Like, any place where you can't find who these people are, like that worries me. Again, nothing, you can't say everything is 100% one way or the other, but like, if you're not being transparent about who works for you or who owns your company, like, that's a little nerve wracking.
Yep. Yep. And you should know, like, do they have a personal touch point? What is also
Mm-hmm.
their professional background? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason to hide the ball here. For
Yep.
the intended parents, it is often a proposition of $200,000 without
Mm-hmm.
a guarantee of
Right.
success. And for surrogates, given the medical risks involved and the giant leap of faith, or not faith, but the trust that they're placing
Yeah.
in the agency to do right by them, and in the intended parents to be collaborative and respectful, like, this is such an emotional and intimate experience that the agency should fade in some ways, fade to the background, because we just shouldn't be an active worry, right?
Mm-hmm.
The most important relationship is between the intended parents and their
I,
surrogate.
I always
And
describe what we do as being like a wedding planner, right?
yeah,
And the surrogate and the parents are they're the bride and the groom essentially, right? In
Right.
this,
Sure.
and the party is having a baby. Like that's where we're going. We're trying to get to having the baby, and
That's right.
we're there to make sure that the florist shows up, and if the caterer didn't make it in time, or there's whatever, somebody licked the frosting on the wedding cake, that we like smooth it over, or whatever you do. I don't know. I eloped, so it's a really bad analogy. So for me, but it works, because the point is that we are not the center, right? We
Right.
we are just the outside, making sure all the pieces get there.
Right. If we're doing our job, you should just be like, everything went off with a hitch. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much.
And they should be like,
If
the agency didn't do anything. Is what
right.
usually, and I'm like, oh, you have no idea. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, we're like the ducks that are paddling underwater, but
Right.
above water seem calm. And yeah, no, I mean, I think, but I think the way the question was asked was also about to make sure that the process is there. And I think
Yeah.
process is everything here, because I think about the New York Times article or the Mark Surrogacy scandal. Like in the New York Times article about that case, there was no group psych session, clearly, because if the intended father was not consenting, like
Right.
he wasn't required to attend a joint psych session with the surrogate.
Right.
I can't validate this, but the internet chatter suggests the surrogate was also lied to about how many children they had already.
That
That's
I saw
something
that.
that, should have been transparent and disclosed.
And that
Um,
his wife shouldn't have pretended to be him at a hearing,
right, shouldn't have
like,
like
and if
coughed
the
and yes.
if the attorneys had done the review with the camera on, because
Yep.
we've moved, obviously, doing so much on the internet, and even for us, like on the agency front, like we like our match meeting, everybody must put faces on camera, all parties must be at the match meeting. We will not schedule it unless all parties are available, and we do it. That's the thing, is that we make sure we show up. And again, I don't know if your process is the same,
Same.
but we're there because we want to make sure the hard questions get asked, and we want to
Hmm.
make sure everybody shows up, and it's not just that intended mom and the gestational carrier got together and they decided it
Right.
was amazing, and it turns out that intended dad, like, something, I'm not picking
Yeah.
on intended dads, but like that he's like, I don't even know, a lot of times people obviously can get past match meetings without with a lot of grace, but the point is like that we lay eyes on them, right?
Yeah.
All of them. And if that attorney had them turn on the camera, and if that judge had actually held out and made them turn on the camera, like,
Hmm.
so many accountability points that, again, that case is just a big icky epic yuck.
Yeah.
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 It's a
No,
case
but
study of what not to do. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, the way this is structured to make sure that there's no ties between agency and clinic, between agency and attorney, like your
Right.
attorney should be representing you and
Correct. And
shouldn't owe
not your
anything to
intended
your
parents.
agency, right? And
Yeah.
not your intended parents.
Yep.
The
And
psychologist should be
mhm.
representing you in effect by being a gatekeeper. Your
Yep.
escrow should be independent
Completely
and
independent.
following the terms of the contract and
Yep.
not asking permission of the intended parents or the surrogate of the agency. Like,
Hmm.
everything needs to be separate for good reason so that
Yep.
there's clean lines for everybody's protection. So just
Yep.
ask a lot of questions.
I think that's exactly right. And any program that's not willing to be transparent is probably not a is its own red flag. That's just what I'll go with there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. I was like, we can keep going for a long time, but I was
We
like,
really
we hit the
can.
end of our time. So
This is, I think we're trying to keep these sort of short and sweet, but not before a final plug for
okay. Yeah.
people to give us additional topics for discussion, feedback. I mean, I particularly don't know what I'm doing here. So,
If they don't give us one, we'll come up with some. I'm
yeah.
sure I can probably talk to a wall, quite honestly. So, like, we'll come up with things as we go.
That's right.
Amazing.
Um,
All right. And I think I will also love to say that if anybody who's watching this, either now or historically, if it shows up in the record, like, I know Jarret and I both are totally willing, like, reach out, even if you don't want to be with our programs, like, we're
yeah.
like totally both like very education centric. And so, like,
Yeah.
reach out, ask us if you're talking about two programs like that aren't ours. Like, I think we'd still both be willing to say, like, hey, here's maybe some questions you should ask, and help people
Hmm.
along the way.
That's exactly right. And I think this is, given all of the scandals in the news of late, like for all of us that care so deeply about preserving this as an ethical way to build your family, as a choice, an empowering choice for surrogates who want to help somebody else start or build their family in such a beautiful way. We are very protective of just how this goes down generally, and so want to make sure that everybody is well taken care of, not just because we're human people that care about other human people, but also because we care about this and
Yeah.
just the way this
I
works.
mean,
And so,
this is
yeah,
how your babies are here, right? Like,
that's
so
exactly
it's
right.
so intensely personal. Like,
Yes.
there are very few people who work in this sphere that it's not intensely personal for.
Yeah.
And especially like ask people what their story is. I think that's also just a great like who anybody you're interacting with at a surrogacy program, ask them what is your story, what is your why,
Yeah.
and I think generally that's where you're going to get your answer as to whether they're a good program or not.
Yeah.
So
I like that. That's a great note to end on.
excellent, awesome, thank you
Jen,
so much. All right, well
this
we'll
was a
see everybody
pleasure.
at I know we'll see everybody in a couple weeks then.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this again.
Awesome. All right.
Bye. All right, let me see how to end this.